Welcome to Ride On, episode 20. I'm James Gross, and I'm joined by my co-host, Julia Thane. Julia, we're almost into July, episode 20. This is like one of your chapters. How are we turning the page into July?
Oh, interesting. How are we turning the page into July? Well, first of all, it's not July yet. It's still June, which is my birthday month, as we talked about before, James. So I would like June to last as long as possible so I can continue celebrating my birthday. But in the meantime, James, today I'm actually I'm zooming in from the micromobility capital of Southern California, which is...
Encinitas?
No, come on, it's Santa Monica. I mean, good trying to take that mantle from Santa Monica, but I think it's still got to be Santa Monica. The bike lanes over here, the scooters, the e-bikes. I'm working out of a WeWork today, and the entire lobby, I kid you not, is just like e-bikes and e-scooters, and then like a foldable e-bike. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, did you get it? Well, I assume you drove there, so maybe you didn't, but there's some new bike infrastructure they put in recently. I was going to say, have you ridden on it yet?
Not yet, but I plan to ride on it later. And just check it out generally. It's been blowing up my Twitter feed. Just to give you an example of how cool I am, like my Twitter feed is just entirely bike lanes and like micro-mobility options now, which I feel targeted. I feel a little bit targeted by Elon. I think he's like, Julia clearly just likes e-bikes and bike infrastructure. So that's basically all I'm getting at this point.
Yeah, that's good though. I mean, well, it's good if it's good. I guess I feel like a lot of the bike lane porn it gets into like, how people are complaining about it. So, I would rather to be more optimistic, but that's just a problem.
This is what I get to be sunny, optimistic. Bike lanes are great, and you get to be cloudy, negative. Bike lanes need to happen for more safety. We balance each other out, James.
I agree. That's very good. Well, thank you, Elon. Really appreciate it. All right, we got to dive into the show, Julia. We got an action-packed show, including having the one of the co-founders of Apollo Scooters on later today to talk about their new vehicle and their campaign, which I'm very excited about. And we're going to talk a lot about scooters today, so that's going to be a great interview. We also have some giveaways to announce, and so I'll do that now. The first giveaway is for the Nui KQi3 that we've had open for almost a month now with the folks at Nui, which is very exciting, and I'm excited that we're able to finally give this vehicle away. And the winner of that vehicle is actually Nick Fountain. So congratulations, Nick. You will be getting a brand new scooter, and I'm very excited for you. As well, last week on the show, Julia, we had Alex from Async on to talk about the A1. You remember that vehicle?
I do.
Yeah, and you're gonna get on that vehicle soon, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, great looking vehicle, super fit for purpose for women, especially. Yeah, just a super feminine and masculine looking vehicle.
Wait, I'm confused by this. Is it or is it not? I feel so trolled by you. Like,
it's gender neutral. It's a gender neutral design.
Interesting. Okay, I would love for people in the comments to shout out whether or not the Async A1 is gender neutral, because Julia says it is, and I'm skeptical. I think is where I would leave that.
Okay. All right, James.
But they were giving away a vehicle at Micromobility Europe and through an entry at Micromobility Europe, and we wanted to shout out the winner of the Async A1, which is Alex Nesic, which is really exciting. Congratulations to Alex. It's a big win. And then finally, we have one more giveaway this week, Julia, we'll be giving away on the show in the coming weeks. And that is from our friends at Lectric, the new Lectric Lite. And the giveaway process is a little different than in the past, where usually we'd love for you to leave comments on YouTube and also go to ridereview.com and enter your information. Now for this giveaway, you'll actually go to lectricebikes.com, and we will put the link in the show notes so you can know where to go in order to win that giveaway. Then one other just housekeeping announcement. I wanted to give a shout out, Julia, to Micromobility. So her name is Billy, and she was at Micromobility Europe. She actually came and helped out, and she was awesome, had a great attitude. Really, a lot of people got to meet her. And she launched her new YouTube channel. She's calling Micromobility after her name, not Micromobility. And I just loved her first video, of which, of course, was a lot of Micromobility Europe and just talking about the fascination of micromobility. And she wants to kind of cover this space. So I wanted to give her a shout out and ideally encourage people to go check out her channel and subscribe to it, because I'm really excited that her first video is great and how she kind of edited it. So I'm very excited about that. Did you get a chance to meet Billy by chance, Julia, at
I did
Micromobility Europe?
not. I did not. And I wish I did, because I love a good pun. And I feel like micromobility is one of the better puns that I've heard in this space in a while. So very excited to see your channel. I'm also just wondering, James, are we sparking a movement? Like, is there now going to be just a series of YouTube channels about micromobility, micromobility news, micromobility reviews, micromobility here and there and everywhere? Are we the start of this, or is micromobility an indicator of just a larger trend towards more micromobility being visible on YouTube and other social media channels?
Just like Mr. Beast has been complaining a lot lately about the knockoffs in his world because of his, celebrity status, I do believe the same thing's happening to us as we've grown.
Oh, okay.
And we're moving up the charts. I think we're going to have a lot of copycats. Not to have micromobility. You are not a copycat. You are original. But yeah, I do. It's just, this is the price of stardom, Julia. So we just have to get.
It is.
And bring it on.
Yeah, I'm here for the copycats. Although at next year's Writers' Choice Awards, we're gonna have to create a separate channel a separate award rather, that's just about who are your favorite hosts and co-hosts of YouTube channels. And let's see what the people say that. Let's see what the writers say that.
Wow, I love this. Okay, yeah, we'll put that in. Yes, okay, I like it. Julia, let's get into the news. We got a lot to cover.
We've got tons to cover this week, James. And the first thing we have to cover is actually something that's happening in the States. So as most Americans know, in the States, around the summertime, Congress goes on recess, everything shuts down. But before that happens, there's actually a new bipartisan bill that has been put out in the U.S. Senate that's about e-bikes and batteries. So, James, this particular bill is about limiting the import of unregulated e-bikes and unregulated e-bike batteries into the U.S. Right now, what happens is that trade restrictions allow countries in like China to sell products directly to U.S. consumers without inspection by Customs and Border Patrol. And the reason that they're able to do that is because these e-bikes and e-batteries are sold for under $800. So, above that threshold, if it was like $801, then the Customs and Border Patrol inspects it. Under that, $799 below, Customs and Border Patrol does not inspect the e-bikes and e-batteries. So what this bill is trying to do is reduce the use of this loophole. So this loophole is called the de minimis threshold, and ultimately prevent the importation of unsafe vehicles and batteries. So, James, the group of lawmakers who are putting this bill forward is a little bit ragtag. It's like Earl Blumenauer, Marco Rubio, Sherrod Brown from Ohio, which just goes to show, like, maybe e-bikes are a bipartisan issue. Maybe we're moving beyond politics for e-bikes. But I think it's just interesting that this bipartisan bill is going forward with more of a regulatory angle. Whereas in the past, when we talked about things like the E-Bike Act, which was another piece of legislation put forward earlier this year, that was much more about incentives and trying to give people vouchers and credits. So, James, what do you think? Is this like a step in the right direction, or are we going towards more of a regulation without incentivization? What did you call it? Regulation without incentivization tactic.
I think you're right. I think a lot of what's happening because of things like battery fires and the pressure that I assume these politicians are getting, they're moving fast with regulation without thinking more about how we can incentivize the purchase of these vehicles. So yeah, this is a tax, I think, on consumers. The other thing I'd say, Julia, just coming back from Eurobike again, is the U.S. and China relations as it relates to like e-bikes in manufacturing and distribution is much more closely knit. Clearly in Europe, there's a lot, I believe there's a lot more issues between Europe and China and the tariffs and how you're expected to make your vehicles in Europe within the continent. and that leads to higher prices. And you see that just on the price tags of vehicles in Europe. So there is some concern here. I think that this will continue to increase tension between the US and China in terms of like, what's able to be done at what price. So I think we should expect vehicle prices to go up because of this. And hopefully, of course, there's a lot of good benefits like around fire safety and stuff. But for the consumer, the unfortunate thing is I do think e-bike prices will go up.
Yeah. And so, James, we've talked a lot about, two things regarding battery fires. One is that any problem begets innovation. I mean, there's got to be some solution towards e-bike fires, or e-bike battery fires, rather. And also that a lot of this is happening in New York City with some, especially pretty, tragic stories around what has been the result of some of the battery fires. So just two news stories that are related to this. In terms of innovation, finds a problem to solve. There's a company called e-tron Technologies that's developed an AI-powered algorithm to predict when an EV battery might fail. And so currently that technology is being used for automobile batteries, but I think in the future we should absolutely be using AI as a solution to battery fires for e-bike batteries too. And so hopefully other companies will, copycat e-tron Technologies or do more to leverage AI for things like when EV batteries might fail, because this is absolutely a space that could take down the micromobility industry overall if left unchecked. So then just the second news story around that, James, coming out of New York City, is that New York City is going to invest $25 million of federal grant money to install 173 charging and storing stations for e-bikes outside of public housing. And I think this is super cool, actually, because they not just have a citywide ban on the sale of non-UL certified batteries, which, like you said, is going to drive up the prices, drive up the costs for e-bikes to consumers. But authorities are really trying to say, like, okay, yes, we're going to regulate on the certification of batteries, but we're also going to put some money into especially public housing and low-income housing and e-bikes for residents of those places. So I think very interesting. We're going to see AI pop up, hopefully on the side of making sure batteries are safe, and then also get some additional investment for places like New York City, where they're just saying, instead of like having even EV charging infrastructure, we're actually going to focus on bikes itself. So I think some good news there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, clearly on the AI side, I'm very excited about the idea that like there's a better technical solution to understanding when batteries will fail. And, again, if we're going to talk about regulations, like how could we potentially have this as something that like all batteries have to come with as a warning indication of something being wrong. On the New York City, they're moving really fast. I mean, this again, I go back to that episode with Tora Harris at Juiced, where he said, you're not going to be able to park these vehicles inside, and you can look at China as a leading indicator on that. I'm very curious to see how this is going to work. Clearly, it sounds like this is for more public housing, which is potentially good, but I do worry about theft and storage and people feeling like they don't have the right to, better store their vehicle. And now they're told they have to do it this way. So I hope clearly we need to learn more about these storage stations. But the idea is clearly, people have to feel comfortable that their vehicles are not going to be, destroyed by the weather or stolen if they're now asked to move these outside. But it does seem like a step in the right direction.
Yeah. And just on that point too, I mean, in some ways, actually, it makes it easier to get different types of e-bikes if you're able to store them outside. I know I talk a lot about like, what's the weight of the bike, because I have to go down a set of stairs in order to get to my apartment. And so there are certain e-bikes like the Rad Runner 3 Plus that I have. I really cannot get down those steps. I have to put it somewhere else. So hopefully that also opens up the options in terms of what types of e-bikes people can get. So, James, let me just keep rattling through some of these news stories because they're super interesting this week. So one of the big ones coming out of Europe is about micro shared growth. So Europe's shared scooter market had some serious growth last year. The total number of vehicles on the continent leapt from 285,000 in 2021. So keep that number in your mind, 285,000 in 2021 to... Do you want to guess the number, actually? Yeah, let's see. Let's have you guess the number. What's the number, do you think, in 2022?
5 billion.
5 million? What? Okay. Well, but you were supposed to guess that large a number. Now it's going to sound unimpressive when I say that it was 700,560. So just everybody just disregard James. He's no longer allowed to talk for this episode because he ruined this like amazing surprise of like 285,000 to 700,560 in 2022. That's like 500,000 vehicles almost in a single year, which is nuts. So now, James, I'm not gonna let you guess on any more of these numbers because like you're just gonna ruin it. But Europe showed.
you're bearing the lead, Julia. That number is not nearly as impressive as the other numbers. So I'm just
okay. Well, let me tell you the other number then. Let me tell you the other number. And do you want to guess at this one, or are we gonna let me talk? Okay. So
I'm muted.
So the other thing is that Europe saw a 17x increase in the total number of scooter trips. So 14 million in 2021. That's with 285,000 vehicles. And then in 2022, it was 240 million trips on 700,000 vehicles. So you're talking about a 17x increase in the number of trips, which is wild. Like that's insane. And then you're also talking about only 500,000 more scooters. So what you're seeing is that actually people are taking more trips on this like similar number or smaller number or similar number of scooters. And also the trip likes are changing. So I just think that's like absolutely crazy that, all of these, this like exponential increase in terms of both the fleet size and then also in terms of the number of trips. On the e-bike side of things, there was a total number of 79,917 vehicles for 2022. And the distance mentioned, or the distance rather, that was covered by e-scooter trips also grew by almost 16 times. So 29 million kilometers in 2021 to more than 460 million kilometers in 2022. And maybe last stat, James, before I get you to comment on this, because now I actually want your commentary on how crazy you think this is or whether you think this is crazy at all, is that the incident report, so the rate of injuries on shared e-scooters, fell by 19% in 2022 compared to 2021. So more scooters on the road, more trips, more distance traveled, and somehow fewer injuries. James, are you impressed? What do you think is happening?
I am impressed. And so let me just use some first-party data that I have coming from Eurobike. So at Eurobike, clearly it's a bike event. And, I rode probably 30 or to 40 bikes while I was there in testing them, which was a lot, more than I would normally ride on a given couple days. But actually to get around Frankfurt, Oliver and I both basically just purchased the Lime minutes packages. So we started, I think, with like a 20-minute package or a 10-minute package. I can't remember. But we were riding so much, we actually went up to a 100-minute package, which is, like basically an hour and a half of riding. And we covered miles of Frankfurt or kilometers of Frankfurt this way. And, I ended up riding those shared scooters more than I rode bikes while I was at Eurobike. And I thought that's such a funny little anecdote and not something I would have thought. But the shared scooters are at the very bottom of the market right now. Like everyone hates them. Investors hate them. Politicians hate them. A broad swath of the public appears to hate them. But damn, are they convenient and fun. And, it's like the old saying we used to have, like we can win, micromobility can win with your wallet and your time, meaning we can be cheaper and faster, which again, usually you can't trade those two things off. Usually it's, if you're faster, it's more expensive, right? Like if, you can get somewhere on a jet much faster than you can in a commercial plane, but it's way more expensive, right? Like the scooter was not only the cheapest solution, like, getting around in taxis in Frankfurt was so expensive, but it was also slow. Like the entire city is congested, where scooters you can get around so much quicker. And again, the element of fun as well. Like I rode some shared e-bikes, but like the scooter is just more fun and it's easier to navigate. So I'm excited to talk to, of course, Paula later today about this. But yeah, I think for anyone out there that's like interested in working in scooters in the shared market, I would say like now is an amazing time where like the scooter market is at this terrible bottom, but the data shows like these things are still incredibly popular and really have a place in society. So yeah, that's my mini rant.
Yeah. Yeah, well, sure. Is that a rant? Does it count as a rant? It
I
seems
don't
more like
know.
a hype speech.
Maybe
Yeah,
a hype. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit of a hype speech. But no, I think it's a fair point where it's like when the market is down, when the prices are low, like maybe that's actually a good time to invest, and maybe it's a good time to double down on shared scooters. I might also say that probably below all of those data are two things, or my two guesses as to why that's happening is there's more infrastructure going into Europe. So there's more bike lanes, there's like slower speeds, there's safety infrastructure that I think European cities are putting in. Not to mention that the density of European cities usually supports micromobility in a different way than places with lower density does. The second thing, though, I would say is this is like this is the message that I've been trying to spread to people, which is when you have more people on scooters and bikes, then it becomes more safe. And so, like, one of the things I have been suggesting in places where it's like hard to get bike infrastructure installed for political reasons is that you just have to get more people on bikes and scooters, doing that through shared systems, doing that through incentives so people can buy privately owned scooters and bikes at lower prices. Like, I just think that that is partially driving, all of this, which is like when there are more people on scooters and bikes, then there's a tipping point effect. And also it creates both the perception of more safety and then actually probably also more safety itself, because car drivers, bus drivers, other types of drivers are looking around for people who are cycling or scooting. So,
Yes.
James, very interesting. Yeah.
I was going to say on that note, Julia, maybe I could cover one topic before we invite Chris up, which is, there's been a lot of headlines. We led with this on our newsletters about the data now that's collected from 2022 showing that actually pedestrian traffic deaths in the United States was at a 40-year high. And the chart that we share here is simply staggering, where, from 1980 to 2008 or so, 2009, we made this incredible progress, cutting pedestrian deaths almost in half. And since that time, we've lost that progress entirely, and it's now at a 40-year high, which is simply stunning. You don't see, you don't see mortality effects like that, premature deaths like that over time in Western society generally, whether it's cancers or anything else that tends to plague people. Like we're able to solve it. We're able to figure out ways to make it better. So the data is just stunning. So your point on safety, I think, is such a good one. And of course, this can be, the bad actors here could be, a lot of it is put on the idea of the rise of the SUV and the light truck in America, as well as, of course, the advent of the iPhone and Android operating systems that just created way more distraction within cars. And so, I agree with you, Julia, that so much this is about mass adoption of micromobility vehicles in order to create safety. I am concerned about what you see, though, from our policymakers, whether it's, we've had some tragedies in Southern California where, in looking at the tragedies, the answer often is, we need to teach kids how to ride e-bikes better, which of course is great. I mean, you can't say no to that. Of course, we need to teach kids how to operate electric vehicles better, especially kids that are under the ages of like 16 or 18. But again, it's when you look at the pedestrian deaths, the answer is not to teach people how to walk better, right? Like there's something else at play here. And it's not that we don't know how to walk. It's that there's really bigger concerns around safety at play, and we need to address those directly. And so I just wanted to, express a little bit of frustration and just hope that we can actually solve problems better. And the other thing I just want to say, especially here in California, which I've been deeply disappointed by the state and local legislators that I've seen that are really so anti-technology and almost like Luddites. And I want to call out two things. One is a report out from Reuters this week that it appears that San Francisco policymakers are facing charges for faking traffic collision data about self-driving cars. So there's an accusation that San Francisco policymakers actually reported higher self-driving collisions than there were. And this is like a very serious accusation, of course, because you're faking collision data. But this has been reported by Reuters, and we can link to it. This is also coming at a time when San Francisco is facing astronomical deaths as they've basically reduced traffic enforcement based on policing, which we've talked about in the past. So there's just so many things happening in California as one example. I think this is a nationwide problem. That's of course what, where the data shows we have real problems, where not only do we have a crisis on our hands, but we have politicians that are like legitimately think the solution is like, let's invest less in technology, let's invest less in traffic safety. Let's try to like somehow solve this another way. And so I am incredibly concerned about this. And I am on the side of technology, on the side of companies like No Traffic, which just raised a Series B to try to solve traffic congestion and also ride safety when there's pedestrians and bicyclists around. Like, I don't see any way around this. So yeah, I'm deeply concerned. I hate these numbers, and I'm even less impressed with the people that are in power, which I try to empathize with, but I just don't see their solutions. And I don't see how it's helping. And so, yeah, that's my rant. What do you think, though, Julia?
Oh my gosh, what do I think? I mean, there's not enough time to properly express what I think. I think in terms of leadership, it starts at the top, and Governor Newsom has done very little to be a leader in terms of road safety, and for that matter, safety for pedestrians and cyclists. But I think, honestly, one of the things that I could see state of California, other states doing that they're not, is starting to regulate and charge larger vehicles more. So, James, just to bring in maybe one final news story before we talk to Apollo, is that like New York, for example, is considering a bill to hike registration fees for larger vehicles. My organization, Rocky Mountain Institute, had actually done some research on how higher registration fees would push people towards both electric vehicles and then also towards non-motorized transportation options. I mean, I think it's absolutely nuts that we continue to have heavier and heavier vehicles, whether they're electric or not, on the road that when you're standing next to them, like often the person who's driving it cannot see any pedestrian, whether they're a child or whether they're like my height, so 5'6". And I just think like if, politicians don't want to do something deliberately on walking and cycling and getting infrastructure and slowing down speeds, they should at the very least start to internalize some of those prices and higher costs to society for larger vehicles. And we should see that again, whether it's battery electric vehicles or whether it's not, whether it's internal combustion engine vehicles. And that's an area where folks like Governor Newsom, even some of the local officials absolutely should lead. They should not, shy away from doing that, because we're starting to have alternatives and very viable alternatives, whether it's better transit or whether it's e-bikes and micromobility options, or whether honestly, even it's like autonomous vehicles that might actually end up being safer than people-driven vehicles. So was that enough of a rant, or should we rant more?
No, you were good. I think we're kind of like aligned on that. I think you also have a good angle on the policy side. Your New York story is a great one. I mean, the other thing about the New York story that's just important to mention is like this would actually take the state level EV credit away, because so many of the new electric vehicles like the Ford F-150 Lightning are heavy. So you wouldn't get the incentive credit anymore, which I think is great. Like, we shouldn't just be giving blanket incentives for electric vehicles when they're, twice as heavy as the gas counterpart. Like, that's going to most likely kill more people. And that's like what we should absolutely be protecting against. So we got to talk more about this. We're out of time though. Let's invite Chris Ray from Apollo Scooters, the co-founder, chief growth officer, to the stage. Chris, how are you doing today?
Hi, James. Hi, Julia. I'm good, thank you. How are you both doing today?
Doing great.
Doing great. Yeah, where in the world are you, Chris?
So we're based in Montreal, Canada. So yeah, just north of the US.
Hey, we got a Canadian.
Yes, we can find it on a map, Chris. Yeah.
I know some people I know.
I don't know about James. James might not be able to find it on a map, but
wow.
Yeah, it's quite funny because lots of people actually jokes about it, being like, okay, you started a scooter company where it's snowing 7-8 months a year. Doesn't really make sense, but anyway, it's all part of the plan.
Well, yeah, let's start there, Chris. So I think you guys are like sort of an anomaly of a lot of complications in that you're a Canadian scooter company. You're also a startup that actually ships scooters, which is a real problem in our industry. We have a lot of people that make concepts, but as far as I know, listening to the podcast that you did with Oliver, you shipped 30,000 scooters last year, which is just an incredible number. And you're basically only, your competition are sort of like publicly traded vehicle companies like Segway, Ninebot, and Nui, and then there's you guys. And so out of Canada, out of a startup, bootstrap, self-funded, so didn't take any outside capital. There's a lot of things about your story that are almost just a contradiction, like not the kind of pattern matching you do to find success. Why? What do you think that is? Why have you been so successful when others haven't?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I mean, for context, we started the company in 2019, and like you said, a very untraditional path in which we started just buying and selling, Segway scooters and whatever, in Canada and the US because nobody else was doing it. And we very quickly, sort of through the customer feedback and through just selling scooters, realized, okay, these scooters are not that great. There's much more that consumers want, but they're not getting. So the first year we did that. The second year we did OEM. So we didn't have enough capital to design our own scooters. So we just put our logo, created a photo, and created this brand. And again, just listening to our customers' feedback and understanding what they wanted. The year afterwards is when we had enough capital to start designing our own scooters and creating our own IP. So today, fast forward, we're in 2023. All our scooters, like you said, we've sold 30,000 scooters last year. And what really makes us stand out is we collect all the riding data of our consumers in terms of how they ride, the acceleration curves, the speed, the distance, etc. And all our scooters are tailor-made based on those riders' habits. So I think one of the biggest things is we listen to the consumers, and we've been in a very fortunate position in which we understand the pain points of the electric scooter market, which is very, very hard. Like, lots of people think, electric scooters, you just need to sell it, and that's pretty much it. But there's a repair infrastructure, there's the feedback, there's the features. It's all really important and very hard logistically and operationally. And that's why today, we're able to launch these products and have a very sustainable business model, which we're focused on operations, logistics, distribution. So yeah, the long story short, I think it goes back to just listening to your consumers and making sure you're making a product that makes sense and tailors towards a specific customer need.
So I guess another question I'll have before I kick over to Julia is, we were just talking about some of the shared data that's coming out now via Zag Daily. They shared it at the Micromobility Europe event, and it's on their website. But basically, the ridership for shared scooters is accelerating in Europe in a very big way. Basically, the rider numbers are up like 17x year over year, which is just astounding levels of growth. That's, of course, there's a lot more deployments. There are a lot more countries now. In all of that. And what my experience, so I am a self-proclaimed, e-bike rider for the most part. I have 8 of them at home. I love them, and I love trying new ones. And I don't ride as many scooters, partly because I came out of a little bit of the early shared scooter riding models of the 2018, 2019, when the quality just wasn't there. I will say though, at Eurobike last week, I was there with Oliver Bruce, and we rode a ton of e-bikes, of course, but I rode more shared scooters than anything because, of course, going from point A to point B and the cost of it. And I was astounded at how the quality level and the fun, the time savings and the cost savings, to the point where, Chris, I would like to get this new Apollo Pro you got coming out on Indiegogo. So I guess my question to you here is, how do you get the people that love e-bikes to try something like the Apollo Pro? And how can you get them into your family where they might say, again, someone like me, who I'm in the industry, I try a lot of vehicles. Until this trip to Europe, where I was really forced to ride a lot, I now see the opportunity for, a product like this. I'm just curious, how do you make this more mainstream? How do you get people like me to convert quicker and not have to ride shared scooters first in order to see the real value of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess the whole reality is, like you mentioned, a lot of people start off on the rental schemes and they realize this is actually really fun, really convenient. But, I want a bit more suspension, I want a bit more power, and it's quite expensive as you back up the rental things every day. So then they come to us. And again, our credibility is everywhere in terms of online. And that's probably our biggest, one of the hardest things to do is, how do you get everybody to test drive a scooter in order to purchase one? And that's what we're working on now. So again, in the US, we have pretty much close to 10 repair centers and repair center partners which do test drives that can do it. But referral is one of the biggest ways, to be honest. Like, our referral network is absolutely huge. Our affiliate network is absolutely huge. And just showing consumers through YouTube videos, through showing them through credibility that, again, this is an actual vehicle that can replace your car, which is crazy. So the credibility part is huge. And I think that's one of the things we're working on for next year, especially as creating a program in which consumers can let other consumers test drive their scooters. So a self-test drive model, which is really important as well. But we're just seeing more and more people adopt electric scooters as the economy in the US is taking a hit. Scooters are a cheap form of transportation. it's really becoming mainstream, and the technology is finally catching up, which is great. So today, for example, 60% of our consumers are actually replacing their cars with scooters from what they say to the data, which is huge. So the next challenge for us is really, again, now we have the credibility online. How do we get that credibility offline and allow a model for test drives for people like yourself who have an e-bike and are like, oh, let me just try this. And again, 90% of people who test drive a scooter end up purchasing. So we got to just adopt that fully across the US and North America.
Interesting. Well, Chris, you're picking up so many themes that I want to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about members. I want to talk about this consumers letting other consumers test ride their scooters, excuse me. And then I also want to talk about data. So let's discuss data first. You had mentioned that you're sort of listening to the consumer through data and through understanding how they use the vehicle itself. So how does that work exactly? Like, are you doing focus groups too? Are you just collecting vehicle data? How are you starting to both indirectly and directly read those consumer preferences?
Yeah, great question. So all our scooters have Bluetooth compatibility and then app compatibility. So through the rider data, we can see exactly how they're using the scooter on a user basis. And then during our launch process of every product is where we do most of these focus groups. So when we launch a product, we do 6 previews on YouTube. Then we launch a beta program, which we have 200 riders. Right now, for example, the Pro, there's 200 riders who are currently testing it, and they have to ride 500 miles, logging in all their feedback, and then they sit down and have a full focus group with us to share what they learn about the scooter, what they think can use some improvements, and then ultimately signing off the product before we actually go to market. So we have all these steps in place to make sure that, again, all the data from the riding experience is there. Are the customers in the focus group, can they share their pain points to make sure the scooter is absolutely perfect execution on launch? And then using that data to really make sure the battery is enough, the speed's enough, the suspension's enough, etc. Because we all know the reality. If you ask the customer what they want, the highest speed, most battery range, at the cheapest price.
Sure.
So you're like,
It's like, okay, well, we got it. You're right.
Exactly.
Very interesting. Yeah. And then the other thing, Chris, about this consumers letting other consumers use their scooters in order to test ride them. I want to ask about business models for you. So you're like direct to consumer right now, right? And it's you just purchase the vehicle, then the vehicle's yours in perpetuity. Are you all considering other business models? Are you considering subscription? Are you considering leasing?
There's a
tell
lot
us the
to
truth,
unpack in
Chris.
that.
I can tell you. I can tell you're about to give me a lie, but you got to tell me the truth.
No, I'll tell you completely truth, no problem. So we did a subscription model in Montreal to test because we're like, maybe we're losing out a lot. The reality is it's a very, very, very hard model to crack and make money on. It's not our focus. I don't know how Alignment Vet and all are doing it, and even looking at bad stock, it's not looking very hot right now. That's not the business we're in. I think the subscription model makes a lot more sense because you're essentially allowing customers to subscribe for a scooter, and then you keep them in the long term. It's a bit like your cell phone plan, right? You're always keeping it. You're never actually owning the product, and after 2 years, you can switch and evolve it based on your life stage. So our business model is very simple. It's, again, B2C in North America, B2B in over 15 countries worldwide, like Australia, New Zealand, etc. And now with the new Explore that we're launching at Micromobility in September, that's opening up a whole new door towards commercial fleets because it has a swappable battery, it has IoT, it's portable, and that's a whole different business model. So we're not going down the business model of rentals. I think that's not our bread and butter. The subscription is definitely one, commercial is one, and then while we finish our B2C as well.
So exciting. Wow, you're on quite a growth trajectory there. So Chris, final question for me, and then I'll turn it back over to James and maybe close us out. Okay, so this consumers letting other consumers ride their scooters made me think of like how you create community among your consumers and whether this is like a member pool or whatever. And so James and Chris, you weren't at Micromobility Europe, right? Why weren't you at Micromobility Europe?
No, sorry, last year.
Oh, yeah, last
year.
year. Okay, you should have been there this year. We did a rave ride of a lifetime. It was the absolute best. So Chris, next year I better
amazing.
See you. Yeah, it was so fun. Okay, so anyways, we better see you at Micromobility Europe. But what I was going to say is one of the companies that was there was SwapFeeds. And SwapFeeds has done this absolutely amazing job, Dutch company, of creating this like community of SwapFeeds users. So their tag or their sort of thing is that there's a blue tire on the front tire and you just see them all over the place. So that made me think like, how are you kind of creating community among the consumers of Apollo scooters? Are you creating community? Or are you doing that intentionally?
Yes, community is huge. Community is where we got to where we are today. I think if you look at Reddit groups, Facebook groups, we have over like 20,000 active members in there. And that's where we got all the feedback and everything else. And it's people with electric scooters are the most passionate consumers ever, which is amazing. It's very tough.
That's so weird. Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
And it's incredible. So that's where we get all the feedback and everything else from. The subscription model, the model in which sort of letting people test drive and the community aspect, you have to have the tech needs to be there first of all. So right now, for example, our scooters now have IoT, which again, no scooters on the market except for I think ebike has IoT compatibility, and that allows theft detection. It allows you to track it at all times and to lock it up and to control it. Once we have that, then we can start allowing customers to say, hey, you can leave your scooter outside, put it on subscription mode or rental mode, and someone can come by, scan a barcode, and use it, and then we can always control it if someone steals it. So adopting mass models like that is something that we always keep in mind. But the technology needs to be there, and that's what we're working on now to grow that.
Wow, amazing. Well, Chris, very, very interesting things ahead for Apollo, it seems like. James, you want to take us to the end?
Yeah, Chris, so let's talk about the Apollo Pro that's coming out on Indiegogo on July 12th. Let's just, what do you got there? It looks like the one I want to get, so I guess pitch me on it.
Yeah. So the Apollo Pro it's a first hyper scooter that offers like a seamless running experience through technology and design. So ultimately it's, normal scooters, they have, the scooter industry is still a very, very new industry compared to e-bikes, for example. And most scooters have 100 moving parts that are not connected and don't speak to each other. The Pro is completely different. It's sort of a unibody frame. You have IoT, you have 12-inch self-healing tires. Proprietary controller is the most important part on this because you can now brake fully through electric force and it stops you completely, which doesn't exist on a scooter today. So small things like that. I think the Pro is really one of those scooters which it ticks every single box on the feature set, again, IP66, IoT, etc. And it's an incredible looking scooter. So I don't know if you've seen it already, but it looks like a Cybertruck of scooters. The lights are everywhere, etc. And it's really our sort of top of the top. And then that technology is going to be pushed down into the new lineup that we're going to have, like the Explorer lights coming next year. So again, Pro is around 42 miles per hour top speed, probably 60 miles range, and just an incredible vehicle.
It looks awesome, and yeah, those specs are great. And I honestly, the only thing is I don't really feel like I need to go 40 miles per hour, but I guess it's cool that the option.
James doesn't look to go fast, yeah.
and that's a beautiful part.
Like
at Micromobility, at Micromobility Europe last year, where we launched this, the most beautiful part of the scooter was it's a hyper scooter, and you would see people test driving this. It was like the first test drive person was a 62-year-old woman, and I was like, this is an example of it. Like you have full control, you can go nice and slowly, you can accelerate, you can brake, or you can go flat out and hit 50, 60 miles an hour. Versus the hyper scooter today is when you touch it, your whole back goes off, right? It's all about that sense of control.
Yeah, that's awesome. In terms of so July 12th, it's coming out. Like what are we talking about from a price point perspective? What do we think people are ultimately going to end up paying for the Apollo Pro?
Yeah, so the retail price of the Pro is $3,999 US, but with the Indiegogo campaign, there's $800 discounts in terms of parts and discounts. So now we have a 500 unit batch on July 12th, and then as of when it gets shipped in November, it's going to be around $3,999 retail. So if you go on Indiegogo now, you'll get much bigger discounts, and that's again the difference is that we are on Indiegogo, but we've sold over probably 100,000 scooters to date. We're a legit company compared to some of the Indiegogo campaigns where sometimes you're just throwing in your money buying and you don't know what's going to happen. So we're doing this just to have a bigger market reach and to just try a new platform.
Yeah, interesting on that. Just a final thing there. So clearly you have a big brand, you have a big community. You could sell this on your website. I guess, are you just really trying to find a different type of consumer on Indiegogo? And again, I also agree with you. Like sometimes you would worry about, what do you buy with Indiegogo? I think clearly with what you buy with Apollo, you're getting a real vehicle, you're getting people that can execute. Why go the Indiegogo route?
Just a much bigger market reach. So you're acquiring new customers through that platform reach. So we will still be selling on our website through our retailers and our wholesalers internationally. Indiegogo is just like a great platform to sort of have again a much bigger pool of consumers and to showcase a product to.
Sounds good. Okay, well, Chris, hey, thanks for coming on. Congrats on all the success and on the coming of the Apollo Pro. And yeah, we'll stay in touch. We'll see you at Micromobility America in October.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for having me on the show, guys. And if you need anything else, just let me know. And We're going to be presenting the product Explore for the first time at Micromobility America in October. So really, really excited. This is, again, a very foreign vehicle. Like it's dual deck platform. So you're riding like this, not like this. And lots of people are a bit, skeptic on it. So the whole point of having it there is for people to test drive it, see the technology and fall in love with it. So really looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah, the front facing. We're big fans. So yeah, we can't wait to try it. Cool. All right,
Thanks,
Chris.
guys.
Thanks
Take
so
care.
much.
Totally. Thanks, Chris.
All right, Julia, we are out of time. Anything else before we ride on?
James, I think
Do
we
I?
said it all. No more things to say. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for Chris coming on. We'll put in the show notes the link to the Indiegogo campaign. We have the Lectric giveaway as well that we'll have in the show notes. And yeah, ride on, folks. Leave some comments and tell us what you think. And we'll see you next week.